America, land of opportunity, a beacon of hope for the oppressed. These are images deeply ingrained in the American psyche, woven into the fabric of national identity. From its inception, America has presented itself as a shining city on a hill, a model for the world to emulate. Its founding documents speak of liberty, justice, and equality for all. The American dream, that potent promise of prosperity and upward mobility, has beckoned people from every corner of the globe. But is this idealized image an accurate reflection of reality, or does it mask a more complex and often contradictory truth? The history of the United States is a tapestry woven with threads of both progress and regression, of noble ideals and harsh realities. To truly understand America's role in the world, we must confront both the light and the shadow. We must examine not only its aspirations but also its actions, not only its pronouncements but also its practices. Democracy. It's a word enshrined in the American lexicon, a concept deeply embedded in the nation's self-perception. The United States has long positioned itself as a champion of democracy, promoting its virtues both at home and abroad. From Woodrow Wilson's call for a world safe for democracy to Ronald Reagan's denunciation of the evil empire of Soviet communism, American presidents have consistently framed foreign policy in terms of this ideological struggle. The narrative is clear. America, the land of the free, is duty-bound to spread the gospel of democracy, to liberate the oppressed from the shackles of tyranny. This mission, imbued with a sense of moral righteousness, has served as justification for countless interventions, from military actions to covert operations. But how often has this rhetoric matched reality? Has America's pursuit of its own interests, often cloaked in the language of democracy promotion, truly served the interests of those it purports to liberate? The history of American foreign policy is replete with examples of interventions that cast a long shadow over its democratic ideals. From the Vietnam War, a protracted and ultimately futile conflict waged in the name of containing communism, to the invasion of Iraq in 2003, based on dubious claims of weapons of mass destruction, America's actions have often belied its words. These interventions, often undertaken unilaterally and without the sanction of international law, have resulted in immense human suffering and destabilization. The wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, for example, have left behind a trail of shattered societies, fueling extremism and creating breeding grounds for terrorism. Moreover, America's support for authoritarian regimes deemed strategically important, such as the Shah's regime in Iran or Pinochet's dictatorship in Chile, raises uncomfortable questions about its commitment to democratic principles. The dissonance between America's stated ideals and its actions abroad is mirrored in its own domestic realities. While proclaiming liberty and justice for all, the nation has struggled to overcome its legacy of slavery, segregation, and systemic racism. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, with its iconic images of peaceful protesters met with police brutality, exposed the hypocrisy at the heart of American society. Despite significant progress, the struggle for racial justice continues. The mass incarceration of African Americans, the persistent wealth gap between white and black Americans, and the ongoing debate over police brutality all point to the unfinished business of achieving true equality. This internal struggle for a more perfect union, for a society that truly lives up to its founding ideals, is inextricably linked to America's role in the world. How can a nation preach democracy abroad when it fails to fully realize it at home? Section 5. The human cost of inconsistency. The consequences of America's inconsistent foreign policy and its own internal struggles are felt most acutely by ordinary people, particularly women and children. They are the ones who bear the brunt of war and conflict, who suffer the most from poverty and inequality. They are the ones whose voices are often silenced, whose stories are often untold. From the villages of Vietnam to the streets of Baghdad, from the refugee camps of Syria to the detention centers on the US-Mexico border, the human cost of America's actions is undeniable. The faces of the victims, the mothers who have lost their children, the children who have been orphaned, the families torn apart by violence and displacement, stand as a stark indictment of policies that prioritize power over people, self-interest over human dignity. Section 6. Voices of Dissent. Throughout its history, America has also been a land of dissent, a place where ordinary citizens have raised their voices to challenge injustice and hold their leaders accountable. From the abolitionists who fought to end slavery to the civil rights activists who demanded equality, from the anti-war protesters who marched against the Vietnam War to the Black Lives Matter movement of today, courageous individuals and groups have refused to be silenced. These voices of conscience, often marginalized and dismissed by those in power, represent the best of America's democratic tradition. They remind us that true patriotism lies not in blind allegiance, but in holding one's country accountable to its highest ideals. They are the inheritors of a legacy that stretches back to the nation's founding, a legacy of speaking truth to power, of demanding justice for all. Section 7. The price of power. As the 21st century unfolds, America's position as the world's sole superpower is increasingly being challenged. The rise of China, with its rapidly growing economy and assertive foreign policy, has shifted the global balance of power. At the same time, America's own internal divisions, its political polarization and social unrest have eroded its standing on the world stage. The question is no longer whether America will continue to be a global leader, but what kind of leader it will be. Will it cling to a unilateral approach, seeking to impose its will on others through military might and economic pressure? Or will it embrace a more collaborative and multilateral approach, working with other nations to address global challenges such as climate change, pandemics, and economic inequality? The choices America makes in the coming years will have profound consequences, not only for its own citizen, but for the entire world. Section 8. A legacy tarnished. America's legacy as a global leader is a complex and contested one. Its history is marked by both remarkable achievements and tragic failures, by moments of great inspiration and periods of deep disillusionment. The gap between its ideals and its actions, between its rhetoric and its reality, has often been a source of both hope and despair. The question remains, will America live up to its own founding principles? Will it become a more just and equitable society, both at home and abroad? Will it use its power to promote peace and cooperation, or will it continue to pursue its own narrow self-interest at the expense of others? The answers to these questions will determine America's place in the world for generations to come. Section 9. Towards a more perfect union. Despite its flaws and contradictions, America remains a land of immense potential. Its people, drawn from every corner of the globe, embody a spirit of resilience, innovation, and a belief in a better tomorrow. The ideals enshrined in its founding documents, liberty, justice, and equality for all, continue to inspire hope and aspiration both at home and abroad. The task now is to bridge the gap between aspiration and reality, to create a society that truly lives up to its founding principles. This requires confronting uncomfortable truths about the past, acknowledging the ongoing legacy of injustice and inequality, and committing to a more just and equitable future for all. Section 10. Truth and integrity. The pillars